Today we're going to replace the neck gasket on a Kokatat Dry Suit. And as you can see, the neck gasket has been torn all the way down to the fabric. So I'm going to start out here by just grabbing a pair of scissors and cutting away the existing neck gasket. But as I do that, and I'll speed this up, but as I do that, normally we would do what's called a field repair and glue the new gasket to this existing part of the neck gasket that's already attached. But I'd rather do a factory repair. So I'm going to start by grabbing this flat surface. This is a Kokatat neck gasket repair kit. I've covered the bottom part with parchment paper, and the first step is just to kind of insert this in there. And what I'm going to start by doing is removing, I'm just looking for a flat surface to use my iron. I'm going to remove this existing gasket completely from the dry suit, and that way we can glue the new gasket onto the dry suit as opposed to gluing it onto the old gasket. So I'll grab an iron here. This is just your normal household iron, and another piece of parchment paper to protect the gasket, or the garment, excuse me. And I'm just going to press down for about 20 or 30 seconds in a specific area. I've got this guy on medium heat for synthetics, so you don't want to get too hot. But the idea being we just want to press down enough to deactivate the glue that holds the gasket onto the garment. It's a heat-activated glue. So as we go around here, just 20, 30 seconds at a time. Let the glue loosen up and peel it off. And we'll just continue around until we have all of it done, taking care of any little last bits that might get stuck on there. Next, I'm going to remove the neck gasket repair kit from Kokatat. I actually prefer to use a foam core here, so I'm going to go ahead and insert this foam core. I just find I get a better flat gluing surface when I do it this way. The repair kit can be used, and they work very, very well. I just prefer this way. It also sets me up for doing secondary gluing on the gasket once it's in, which we'll see later. So first step is just to get the foam core in there. I'll get this 1-inch silicone band all the way around it, and this is just to hold it in place and also to make sure that everything lays flat. The primary thing here is, the contour of the Kokatat Dry Suit and the contour of the neck gasket, try to pull them apart. So I use these bands to get everything nice and secured on there. And I'll take a quick light sanding here on the existing area where the glue was. Some of the glue is still on the jacket, some of it came off with the gasket. So we just give it a little sanding to do just a little texturing. I want to make sure to be careful here. So I've got this all lined up with the area that we want to glue to. And the next thing I'm going to do is put on a second band, and this will come in later on when we want to secure the neck gasket in place. So after I've applied the glue and put the neck gasket over, I'm going to use the second band to hold it in place and push out any air bubbles that might be in there. So I just like to prep this guy ahead of time. I put it a little bit outside of the blue band because the blue band is where I'm looking for that nice line. It's actually going to act as a mask when I apply the glue. So I'm kind of lining it right up there with the line that was left when we removed the old gasket. And I'll make sure to spend some time to just get all this nice and in place ahead of time. You can see there's a little bit of bunching there, but we'll get air bubbles out with a roller later. So now that this is all prepped, I'm going to go ahead and grab my new neck gasket here, and I'll make sure to turn it inside out since we're gluing it from the inside out. And then I'm going to just do a light sanding around the base of the neck gasket. This is the area that's going to get glued to the dry suit. And I just want to rough it up, something for the glue to stick to. And then I'll go ahead and wrestle this guy on around the form. Sometimes they can get away from you. It can take a little while here, but the goal here is just to kind of dry fit. We'll get everything on. We're not gluing yet. So I'll get this guy up on the form there and more or less in place. But more importantly, I want to get another 1-inch silicone band around it. And that's going to hold the neck gasket in place. And then I can go through and sort of fine tune this. So what I'm doing is a dry fit here. I'm making sure that the gasket and the garment are secured with the bands to the foam core. And then I'm just going to go through and fine tune. So slowly fine tune all of this. And what I'm looking for is I want the amount of gasket that's going to be glued onto the dry top to be showing, so the black part. And I'm going to end up folding that back over the band to get the glue in place. But initially right now I'm just fine-tuning, getting everything sort of set up the way it would be so that when I fold it back it's where it needs to be. And this can be a pretty long process, but it's worth doing. So you'll notice we're going to end up folding this gasket back, and I'll probably end up taping this to the rubber band here. So I'm going to go in with some masking tape, and I'm just going to tape this guy back slowly. Again, we're looking for this overlap. That'll be our gluing surface, but I want to get this gasket part out of the way for now until we get the glue applied to the glue surface, and we'll let that glue get tacky before we start to attach this. So we'll do a quick job here of just going around and taping up that part of the gasket. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to make tons of adjustments later on, but again, we're just getting everything sort of in place and staged up for when we decide to put our glue in. So now you can see we've got a nice, I'm going to create a little bit of a gap here between the gasket and the glue surface, because when I spread the glue, I don't want it to get on the gasket. I don't want any push out. So we'll just go ahead and kind of give a little bit of space here. Give us some room to apply the glue without getting it on the new gasket. So slowly kind of work this around. And the trick here is not to let those rubber bands pull off because, well, it happens. But once we have a nice clean area to apply the glue to, I will go ahead and add another mask. Again, I'm just trying to get glue on the Kokatat garment. I don't want it to get on the foam core because otherwise it'll get on the new gasket. So I'm going to go ahead and put in another tape line here, and we'll just make sure that the gluing area is perfectly taped off so that we can apply lots of glue and scrape it off, and not lots of glue, but apply enough glue, scrape it off, make sure there's no excess on there, get a nice thin layer of Aquaseal. So as you can see, this is a nice clean line, and once the Aquaseal gets tacky, we'll go ahead and remove that mask so that the glue line is nice and contained. So next thing I'm going to do is mix up some Aquaseal here. I'm going to do about 1/8 of an ounce and add a couple drops of Cure Accelerator here. You don't have to use the Cure Accelerator, it's up to you. For me, it reduces the tackiness time to about 15 minutes out of, relative to like 2 hours. So just going to go in here and with a stir stick, I'm just going to go ahead and apply some glue to this gasket. And actually, I'll use an acid brush here. I'm just going to glue it on. Yes, this is a lot of glue. It's okay. We'll come back later. This is Aquaseal, so we'll go in and remove the Aquaseal after we've put it on. So we get good coverage. And then I come back with my paint scraper or my stir stick here, and I just scrape away as much of the excess Aquaseal as I can. I'm just trying to get a nice, thin, even coat on that fabric, and it really doesn't take much glue. In fact, the more glue you use, the worse off you'll be. So I just kind of come back here, give it a nice, even coat, scrape it off, make sure we get a good glue coverage. And once we're done with that, I will go ahead and let this sit aside for, in my case, about 15 minutes, but you might do up to 2 hours if you are just using plain Aquaseal. What we want is for this to become tacky. So tacky means I can touch it. It's still sticky, but it doesn't come off on my hands. So now that it's tacky, I'm going to go ahead and remove the masking tape that was shielding the foam core and our new gasket from the glue. So we'll go ahead and get that out of the way, being careful not to touch too much Aquaseal and track it all over the place. And then we will remove the masking, the tape that's holding back the new gasket. So before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and kind of line everything up a little bit. Once that's removed, I can go and sort of slide these guys together. Luckily, the Aquaseal is tacky, but still sticky. So I'm going to go ahead and move some of it, try really hard to keep my Aquaseal fingers off of the new gasket. And then we will just go around and fold it over. So as you can see, I'm just folding the new gasket onto the existing glued surface there. And I'll just go around and slowly push it into place. Luckily, the Aquaseal is, like I said, tacky but not dry. So there's plenty of play here to move it around and shim it a little bit and get everything in place. And this is just one of those things you want to go through and do. Invariably, some Aquaseal will come off on your gloves and will get all over the place. So now I'm going to go through and roll out any air bubbles. I'm looking for a good adhesion here between the neck gasket and the glue surface. So I'll roll out any air bubbles that we may have. Go ahead and, that pushes out any excess glue that may have found its way in there. And finally, I'm going to come in with some of this Cure Accelerator, or you could use toluene or acetone. And I'm going to clean up any of the Aquaseal that was on my gloves that got on the outside of the neck gasket. So this stuff makes a great cleanup solvent. So I'll just come in here and wipe all of that clean. Our gluing surface is hidden away, so we'll get that nice and clean. Then I'll come back with the roller, and once again I'll make sure to take care of any kind of air bubbles or gaps or anything that might be on there. Again, we're looking for a good clean adhesion, and once I've got, I'm confident that there's no air bubbles in there, then I'm going to go ahead and take this orange band and I'm going to fold it back over, and all this is going to do is apply pressure during the cure cycle. So as I wait for the Aquaseal to cure, which will take 2 to 4 hours with accelerator, overnight 12 hours without cure accelerator, I just want this band in place, and I'm squeezing everything as it needs to be to get the seal as good as it can be. Finally, I'll roll out one last rolling, any kind of air bubbles that might have slipped in during that process. We'll go ahead and get them out. And we're left with the band adding pressure. So after the Aquaseal is cured, I can come back here. And we'll go ahead and just start removing some of these bands and take a look at the glue job that we did. So I'll start by taking this green band off. The new gasket is now glued to the garment. So taking off this green band shouldn't be a big deal. We'll go ahead and remove the orange band as well, because that's no longer needed. And once we get that off, you can see we have a nice, good glue surface. We've got good adhesion. We don't have a whole lot of blowout because we had that blue band protecting it. And it's nice. We've got a clean boundary. It's right on the line we wanted, and things are glued up pretty well. I like to take a little bit of sandpaper and just clean up the edge here because there's usually a couple of little stringies from the Aquaseal. Just going to clean that up, and then I go in with the cure accelerator and get everything nice and clean because I want to come back now and do another glue line. So we have a weak spot here. Where the gasket meets the garment, there's sort of a ridge, and that can be something that over time friction gets in there and somehow peels up. So I like to go through and do a secondary protective seal of Aquaseal around that exposed interface. So we'll go ahead and grab some masking tape here. We've still got this banded onto our foam core, and I'm doing probably an 1/8 inch total. This is a very small band of Aquaseal. It's just designed to protect that interface. So I'll come in here and I'll tape off about an 1/8 of an inch of strip, so 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch on either side of the new gasket. And as you can see, there's the garment exposed and the new gasket exposed in there. And I'll take a little bit of sandpaper and I'll just go in here and rough this up. Again, we're looking for a textured surface for adhesion. This is not about sanding anything down or anything like that. It's a very light sanding. Once that's done, I'll give it a quick cleaning with the cure accelerator just to make sure it's clean and dry and there's no particles in the way. And I think we're in good shape. So next we will go and apply some Aquaseal. I've already done that, as you can see here, and waited for it to get tacky. Again, 15 minutes with cure accelerator, 2 hours or so, maybe an hour, depends on temperature and humidity. But once it's tacky, I'm going to go ahead and remove this tape. And that's going to make sure that we have a nice clean line on our Aquaseal protective strip there. So I'll get this tape off, and then the next thing we're going to want to do is let this sit until it cures. So I won't move this at all, but as you can see, we have a nice clean line of Aquaseal, keeping that interface safe. Now once this is finished, we'll go ahead and turn this guy back right side out and reinsert the foam core. So as you can see, I've done that here off camera. And you can see a tiny bit of blowout from the glue. This looks a lot worse under these lights. But I like to go and again, just sand that up. We're not knocking it down and getting rid of it or anything. We're just taking care of any rough sort of peaks and valleys that the Aquaseal may have dried in. This blowout occurred because there was some excess glue in there, and when I put the orange band on and did the roller, it pushed out any glue, which is good. We want a thin layer in the gluing surface, and this is about, at the worst case, about an 1/8 of an inch over. So again, we have this interface between the fabric and the new gasket, so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and mask this off about an 1/8 of an inch in total, or an 1/8 of an inch to a 1/16 of an inch on either side of the gasket line. So once I get that all masked up, again, I'll come back and do a light sanding. In this case, sometimes knocking down some of these peaks that might be there from the excess glue. And just go ahead and prep it. So we'll give it a light sanding, wipe it off real quick with some cure accelerator, clean the area, dirt and particle free. And finally, we'll come back in after that and we will apply some more Aquaseal. So again, I've got Aquaseal with cure accelerator, and I use a stir stick for this. So I don't actually brush it on. I just kind of come in here and really push it into that interface. A very small amount of Aquaseal. This is, maybe a 1/16 of an ounce. But I like to just kind of push it in there, and it's okay. In this case, you could put on too much. Then I come back and I scrape it off and get it nice and flat and clean. Push it into any areas it needs to be pushed into. And again, just like before, we're scraping off any of the excess. We're making sure we have a nice thin layer here. We're not looking for a lot of glue. So once that's complete, I will let it sit for, in my case, 15 minutes. I'll clean up any Aquaseal that got away from me with the Cure Accelerator here. But we'll let this sit for about 15 minutes if you use Cure Accelerator, or 1 to 2 hours if you are not using Cure Accelerator. Again, it depends on temperature, humidity. But once this is tacky, so we're back to a tacky stage, I'm going to come back in just like before, and I'm going to remove the tapes, so that will give us a nice clean glue line around this guy. And once we get that tape removed, you can see we've got a nice clean protective line there. And once this cures fully, this dry suit will be ready to go back on the water, nice and fixed. So make sure to subscribe or hit like down below, or for more information, visit us at OregonBoatingFoundation.org.